Green Bay is a small town, only 100,000 people. Those 100,000 people may be different in many ways, but there's one thing that brings them all together: the Green Bay Packers. In Titletown, the blue-collar city only knows hard work, tailgating, championships, but more importantly, they know family.
We have a saying in this town: faith, family, and the Green Bay Packers are all that you need. Sanjay and I grew up in Green Bay. You could say that we are Green Bay, or even better, the voices of Green Bay. We bring a local feel of Packer fandom to a worldwide audience.
Friendship, family, and football.
Ladies and gentlemen,
This is the Freezer Podcast.
What is up? We are back. This is the Freezer Podcast, where we bring you a local feel of Packer fandom to a worldwide audience. I am Sanjay, and alongside me is a special guest today. No Fred, no Matt. Matt is on a beach somewhere in Florida, and Fred is actually dealing with some family things, so he can't make it tonight, but he would love to be here and talk some draft stuff, because that's obviously our favorite part of this, off season is the NFL draft. But I have a new close friend, Mark Marcucci, who is with me today. A little bit different. We have a Bears fan for the first time on the show, and you know what? We want to bring some spice
here, man. Yeah,
bring some spice. Yeah, you were the very first official fan of a different team on the Freezer Podcast. So it's this is a very unprecedented time, and this is a pretty memorable time, because we get to hear from the one guy that we hate the most. That's a Bears fan, right? But no, it's really great to have you, Mark. Thank you so much for joining on this little last second kind of show that we have here. And the draft, obviously, you and I are big fantasy guys for football.
Absolutely.
And I think the draft, obviously, for you and myself gets really interesting because, in the Dynasty League formats, it's obviously a really big, thing, because you want to see what the
especially
rookies
this
are going to
year.
go.
14 offensive players taken right in a row. Just,
Exactly.
Almost like a fantasy draft at the NFL level. It was crazy.
100%. 100%. And I think the weird thing is it's also a different thing, especially you're a Bears fan regardless of fantasy football. You're a Bears fan, you're a football guy. This is the stuff you want to see. Your team finally, this is probably the one draft that probably will go down in history as one of the greatest drafts, that could be, because if Caleb Williams turns out to be the guy that you think he's supposed to be, this will be the year that you can say, damn, I was there, I watched it. We only made 5 picks or whatever you guys had this year, but we got 2 of the most important picks, possibly 3, because I think Kieran is actually a more underrated pick than people make it out to be. But we'll start out with the Bears, and then we'll kind of really quick not quick, but we have a lot of picks. We have 11 picks, so we have a lot to kind of go over on our end. But obviously the biggest thing, and I'm going to throw this to you, is the Caleb Williams thing, right? It's the thing we've known for months. It's kind of what we always figure with the first overall pick is, we already know where they're going typically. Last year was a little bit different with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, but talk about Caleb Williams, what it's kind of really done for you as a Bears fan. Has it rejuvenated your, I mean, we've been through this before a couple years ago, but go ahead.
No, absolutely. So thank you. This has been, this is one of the stories that dominated nationally, right? It was the number 1 overall pick. First there was the saga with Justin Fields. Are they going to keep him? Are they going to trade back again? Where's that going to go? I will say, as a sports radio fan, it got a little tired out here for a couple of months. It was kind of every sports radio.
You're hearing over and over, right?
The same topics, the same talking points. And I'll admit, hand up, I was a Justin Fields supporter. I wanted to move back. I thought we had seen enough that with some more resources it could happen. And
interesting.
Having lived through it at this point, even seeing some of the disappointing returns we got for, the Fields trade compensation there, I'm excited. It's hard not to think, hey, this could be, a potential inflection point for the franchise. Now, to your point, we've been here before, right? As Bears fans, I have been beaten down by hope to the point where from the draft until week 2, week 3, that's the majority of the enjoyment.
That's usually what Bears fans. Yeah, it's they got Super Bowl right on their mind. They got MVP Justin Fields on their mind. I did want to real quick get your point on the because you had a lot of chatter in the offseason, or I guess, yeah, right, kind of before the draft of, is Caleb even want to be there? Does he, he's got this diva mentality. His dad is his manager. He wants to be part owner of the, team that he goes to. He doesn't even want to play for
So
the Bears.
much noise.
And then even the players, they're like, we wanted Fields. Like, where were you on that?
It felt, I'll be honest, it felt like the movie Draft Day, where it was like, holy cow, like, are we getting Bo Callahan here? Like, did his friends go to his birthday party? I need to know, right?
Right.
Because, it was that kind of smoke, right? But then you hear, kind of to the Bo Callahan comparison, you hear his teammates talking about it. And I guess, when the GM of the Bears, Ryan Poles, went to LA and did his visit, I guess he visited with Caleb, but also with Caleb and his teammates. And it was a group of the USC Trojans and seniors that he played with for years that were there with him at dinner. And you could really tell the camaraderie and the leadership that the team felt towards him. And that I think is really, for football, what matters, right? The other stuff I think can be noise, and especially for such a gruff, tough, red-blooded sport like football. I think oh my gosh, he paints his nails. He cried after a loss. It's very easy to get a little bit more of the meathead contingent.
Well, social media pretty much puts any guy on blast, anything he does nowadays compared to 20, 30 years ago. I don't think anybody would have even seen him in the stands crying with his mom, and that wouldn't even been a thing. Now it is, and that's kind of already painted him in a picture, right? And obviously the nails and all this stuff. But you know what? He seemed to be really happy when he got that jersey, when he got that call. He was screaming to the fans walking to Roger. It looked like he was genuinely, happy to be there. And I think he knows that this is a huge moment. Obviously, every draftee has that moment, right? They're like, look, I made it. I got to this point, even though he knew for the longest time, and he also was making money regardless of this, this draft, with the NIL.
Yeah, I think highest paid NIL player of all time.
Exactly.
Football, right?
Exactly.
So,
absolutely. And we'll see how that kind of shapes out, especially with, players that come in, because obviously this was a very smaller class because of, COVID, and also a little bit of the NIL, because guys maybe stayed back because obviously they're going to get paid. So, and we obviously kind of touched on that a little bit before the draft, but obviously the big pick right there, you make that number one, and then obviously then the talk was okay, you drop, you're at 9, do you drop and get a couple of picks, because you only had so just to correct me, is it 4 or 5? I couldn't remember how many you guys had. We
ended up with 4. I think it was
okay. So
no second, a third, and a fourth. So we had 2 firsts and then a third and a fourth.
There we go. So would Ryan Poles really like to add more capital to fill in a lot more needs if they felt like they had more needs, and address other positions? No, you did not. You stayed right there. You obviously let the board fall to you, and who was sitting there at number 9? Rome Odunze. I really thought maybe someone may have snagged him right before you, maybe a Giants, possibly a Chargers. Obviously the Cardinals took Marvin Harrison Jr. as they should, but your thoughts on Rome Odunze just kind of falling to your lap there?
Yeah, absolutely excited. I will say, one thing that I feel like I've never seen as a Bears fan is, well, 2 things. Is either a dominant, set of skill position players, right? We just have never seen, from 1 through 3 on the wide receivers, guys who make anyone scared, right? You might have your Musa Mohammed. You might have an Allen Robinson, where you have, a competent wide receiver.
Curtis Conway.
Yeah, we had moments. We had our moments, right? Yeah. And we've had running backs, but very, very, never have we had, a high level of skill position players. All, with DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, we added with, 4th round pick that we end up sending away, right? So again, you have just the opportunity to really put your thumb on the scale here and say, this is going to be the strength of our team, and I'm glad we took it. The only other way I would have gone would have been maybe some offensive line help. I think. We still could use some help there, but our GM is a former offensive lineman. You got to trust the process a little bit, right? And hope that he knows what he's doing and feels confident in the horses that we have and where things are at. So I think it's pretty cool. It's nice to have a situation where we finally have a new quarterback, rookie quarterback, and we've invested around him so that he's not expected to go out there and do things that
100%.
even a veteran quarterback couldn't do all the time. So again, from now until week 2, week 3, very optimistic. It could go really well. Yeah, we'll have to see it on the field, obviously, but just cool to see a GM and a team doing the things that other successful franchises have done in the past, especially with younger quarterbacks, and kind of building that that ecosystem around them that keeps them insulated, keeps them safe, gives them the resources they need so they can be successful. And that's something that we didn't do with Fields, and we'll always be in the back of Bears fans' minds. I know, hey, if we had invested more, there earlier, if we had built around Justin, where things could have gone, right? I think that'll be something we keep an eye on with Pittsburgh and see how things turn out there, and also see how Caleb's able to seize the opportunity and take advantage of the friendly landing spot.
Yeah, I think the last big name receiver probably like Alshon Jeffrey, which was only like a 4th round pick, I thought, right? I don't even think he was even a high round pick, and but yeah, it's really great to see. It's like 2 picks, obviously, as Packer fans, we hate because it's a good pick and they made the right decision. It was smart. You're getting aggressive, put tools around him.
I love to hear that, by the way.
I gotta say the same thing with the Lions too. I think it's safe to say we can all just really crap on the Vikings because we hate them the most. But like I do think yeah, I mean, yes, and I think the pick was good. I mean, it's obviously you don't know what Keenan Allen's going to be after this year. He does get hurt a lot. Obviously, DJ Moore is a good other piece, but like you can't just have him. So you need to solidify your future as well, especially at that position, and just keep giving him more tools, right? So to work with. So I do like those first 2 picks, and then you kind of wait, right? Then you just sit and wait, and then it kind of gets to the 3rd round, and I think you got Kieran. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. It's an offensive tackle, and it's hard anyway. But I know his first name's Kieran. And obviously, that was another big thing, like you mentioned, that you thought maybe they would do in the 1st round with the 9th pick, but they addressed it in the 3rd round. I think that's another good pick, just because it's like, look, it is never going to – I don't know why anybody, and I guess outside of, like a Tony Mandrich or something, like outside of that, I don't know why people are like going to ever like hate on a team for getting offensive line help. I mean, you can, in my opinion, not have too much because it feels like one guy goes down and feels like it's just like it's a snowball effect, and you feel like you lose your entire offensive line right after that. So I think just depth is always good. Does he come in and take a spot? I don't know. You tell me. How do you think your line is looking right now?
I think the line in general is looking pretty good. I think that we like Braxton Jones a lot. I think we're counting on Ryan Bates coming in and stepping up as a true center. He's the guy we traded a 4th round pick to Buffalo for this year, right? So we had gone after him last year as well, and Buffalo had matched the offer. So someone that clearly the front office had targeted for a long time. Then obviously you had the the 1st round pick last year with Wright that seems to be panning out well. So again, I have to trust when your GM was an offensive lineman, you got to hope that they can at least get that position group right. And
you would hope.
The one thing I do wish with Kieran was the reason I think he fell to us, we had the opportunity there, is that he only played 4 games last year. So he was out with injury and only played 4 games last year. It's going to take probably some work to get up to NFL speed. And again, I think we have a coaching staff and a locker room that can do that. We'd just like to have seen him finishing on a high note, as going into the draft after finishing a strong season. Would have been nice to see, but probably why we were able to get him, right? Probably why he fell. I think there were rumors last year at the start of the college football season that he could have been a top 50 pick. So, excited to have that ceiling, hopefully, potentially, and understand, hey, hopefully we can work it out of him and get him to the point where he's achieving that potential. So again, to your point, always good to have more depth in the trenches. Always good to have more offensive line help, and again, investing in your rookie, right? Because everything gets better if Caleb Williams is good. If Caleb Williams is good, everything around the Bears is better. So throw as many resources at supporting that, as you can to give that the highest chance of success. And I'm, again, glad to see him do it.
And then finally, with the fourth pick, and I think all Packer fans would love to just see this guy go into Canton compared to Caleb Williams or Roma Dunze. Just maybe just this guy can go in because he's punting too much. But that is Tory Taylor from Iowa. Iowa Joe is going to be a really big fan of this guy because he's a big Iowa guy. So the best punter in college football, actually, and he's on your team. So again, you win again another pick, a solid pick. Obviously, there could have been other things you could have addressed, like edge or like linebacker, whatever it might be. Maybe not linebacker, but definitely edge or defensive tackle. But you went punter, and obviously, if you can't get the first down and you have to punt, this guy hopefully can put it and pin it back and put us, put whatever team inside the 20 or inside the 10, even better. And maybe not as many touchbacks, right? So your thoughts on Mr. Taylor?
No, certainly excited. It's unfortunately we've seen a lot of punting in Chicago, so we do understand and appreciate the importance that can have to the game, and really look at this almost as a defensive pick too, right? If we didn't have that many picks, or we could invest in the defensive side of the ball, at least maybe we can help with the field position side of it, right? And getting some things like that going. So it's certainly something that an edge rusher taking a flyer on someone is appealing, but this is kind of an eat your vegetables pick, right? Like, let's not mess around. We can get someone else at the top end of their skill position. And, from that point on, hey, we hopefully help our defense here. And again, you can help that third phase of the game with special teams, at least getting some top end talent. And again, hopefully we're not depending on him to win us games, right? Hopefully.
Hey, he might though. He might.
Yeah.
You never know. Even if it's third down and it's like 2 minutes left in the game and you need to pin someone back inside their 5 and they got to go 95 yards to even tie you or whatever it might be. That's still a win, right? That can win you the game, right? So we did forget about Austin Booker, Kansas defensive end, 5th round. So they did address it. So they did have one more pick. And I do think that was one thing that maybe people were joking about having a punter because you didn't have, you don't have a lot of pass rushing ability at the moment. But, that does seem like an area that I would have probably addressed earlier because obviously you have Jordan Love, you do have Jared Goff. I don't know what you're going to have with if it's JJ McCarthy or, Sam Darnold, whatever it might be over there. But you do in this game, you need to pressure the quarterback, especially in this division, which could be arguably the best division in football, at least offensively. You got to stop these guys some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, it's going to be 30s, something in the higher 20s or 30s as scores, and you're just hoping that you can win the shootout, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think you look at some of the picks we didn't have, and one of those is our 2nd round pick, and that's Montez Sweat out there right now, right?
Oh, so, right. That's right.
So I would have been happy to draft Montez Sweat in the 2nd round if he were available there. So okay with that, and I think if you look at the Bears defense towards the end of the year, once we did that, Sweat, it did tighten up. We were able to get some pressure on the quarterback. The start of the year was rough. It felt like teams had forever to throw on us back there. And we have a decent secondary. I like what we're doing back there. But anyone in the NFL after 3-4 seconds, is going to get open, right?
Right, you exactly. You can't cover forever.
So I think it's still a need that we've got to revisit, either with more free agency depth, the draft next year. I think we're still in a good spot from a cap perspective. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him spend some more money on both sides of the line. But again, happy to take a 5th round flyer at a neat position. You got to take those chances when you get them. Again, don't know much about the player, to be honest, but happy with the pick and the selection and the idea of, again, addressing some more depth at the line spot. And, again, for all those reasons we're talking about, optimistic the defense will be better. Hopefully the punter helps with that as well. And having a defensive-minded head coach, this is what he should be able to get out of his team, right? You should, that part should be a little bit baked in. That I think the expectation needs to be there that Eberflus's defense improves again. Or else, again, hey, you're a defensive expert, man. What are you doing, right? So, excited for the pick and excited to see, hopefully they build on where they started last year and don't take 3 or 4 games to have to figure it out like they have the last couple.
Well, that was 19 minutes too long talking about the Bears. This is the Packers show, and we just spent 19 minutes on that. And no, it's really fun. Obviously, we want to get the perspective of a Bears fan if you're going to have a fan on the show. And I have no problem, giving kudos to a good draft. And, in all honesty, as much as I love saying the Bears still suck, and I hope they still suck, it is good also to see competitive, play and get that rivalry really back. And, as much as I'd like to keep winning on that end of it and still have it be closer games, but I do also like to see if the Bears can be, back to like their winning ways in the sense of just being a formidable opponent, just like the Lions are becoming and the Vikings have been for the most part. But you guys don't need to win any more Super Bowls, though. You can keep that one that's collected a lot of dust.
We'll see. We'll see. We'll see.
So, but yes, that was obviously the Bears side of things. Let's move on to the Packers side of things. And I'm not going to go through every single pick individually. We'll kind of do offense and defense kind of that way. And I'll just kind of shed light on the guys. But this is kind of, and I wish this would I don't understand. I must have put this in the different way here. Probably have to put it in the overlay. But this is our draft. And, we had 11 picks. We pretty much addressed, and I think the nice thing that the Packers like to do, and we've seen this kind of trend from Brian Gutekunst, is address the positions that you need, and that is a weak point, and just hit hard on those positions and put as much resource or as many resources as you can at the position, and just see who battles it out in training camp at on top kind of thing, right? And I do like that approach because offensive line lost a lot of depth. Linebacker, you lost Javonte Campbell. Went to the 49ers. You really didn't have anything after that other than, Isaiah McDuffie, and you have Quay, who you spent the first round pick on. So you address that with two guys. And then safety was the biggest thing. You don't have a single guy really back except for Johnson Jr., who was a draft pick last year, and then you lost a guy to your team. Actually, you lost Simone Biles' husband to you, and then it was just really a weak part of the team. Darnell Savage, first round pick, didn't really pan out the best way. Maybe it was due to scheme, maybe it was just coaching, maybe it was just a little bit of him as well, just kind of teeter-totter, too inconsistent. He goes to the Jaguars, but they addressed that with 3 spots and then or 3 draft picks. So it's like they really attacked hard at the positions that they really thought were weaker or just needed to have more sustenance, basically. So I think that's really nice that Brian Gutekunst kind of has a tell that way, for the fans, because then it's kind of like, okay, now we know, but now maybe that might be bad for the NFC North, because they're like, hey, well, they're going to probably put 3 guys to that position.
It's great to see a GM throw some bodies at the situation in a way that's efficient, right?
Yes.
Ryan Pace was notorious, for really frustrating Bears fans when he would draft a guy and then sign someone at the top of the free agent market in the same position. Kind of like what the Falcons did where Ryan Pace is now, where they signed Kirk Cousins and then went out and put a premium pick into another quarterback, where it's like, great, but this might have been a little over the top, where you've got a lot of late round picks to say, hey, let's take another flyer. Let's take an early guy. Let's take a late guy. Let's make sure we have competition at position, like you said. Certainly jealous of the plethora of picks. Remind me, are these Devontae Adams trade picks? Where did you get all these picks?
Actually, this last one was the Rodgers one. We spent the Adams one with the Luke Musgrave, Tucker Kraft, Jaden Reed, that kind of area, because Brian Gutekunst technically moved back with the Aaron Rodgers pick. He went from 41 to 45, gained some picks. So this would be the Edgerrin Cooper and the Javon Bullard because of Aaron Rodgers. Thank you very much. And then we did have some compensatory picks. So that's where we were seeing some of our picks. But 2 years in a row where we have an extra second, and that's a nice problem to have, right? So but let's move right away to the offense. And our first pick, as everybody kind of thought, was going to be Cooper DeJean, because he's falling and falling and falling. And then everybody's just like, the consensus fan pick was Cooper DeJean. That was my, pick that I wanted to see. And I'm like, man, I'm licking my chops. I'm sitting next to Matt. And then, of course, if it's a guy that I want, then we're not going to take him, right? So this is kind of how it always goes, unless it's Caleb Williams, right? And you're taking him. But we take Jordan Morgan, tackle from Auburn. And I think it's just a nice solidifying piece that look, as much as not the sexy pick as our fans are saying in here, it's a good pick, knowing that, look, it fortifies your offensive line. He can be plugged in. They're saying he's a tackle, but a lot of people, the chair arm experts on Twitter, love to say that he most likely would be a guard because of his length of his arms. So he would probably be a better guard, but we'll see what happens in camp. But that's a really big need that, David Bakhtiari leaves. Rasheed Walker played really nicely last year, and he actually surprised a lot of people as a 7th-round pick and played well. He started. I mean, he went up against the Bosas, and he went up against I can't even remember some of these other defensive ends that were really good, right? And DeMarcus Lawrence, and held his own for the most part. And I don't think he really, didn't cause. He wasn't the weakness of the team, right? We had other issues inside inside at center, inside at right guard. So where do they see this situation of moving things around? Like we talked about this before the draft. Zach Tom, outstanding 5th-round pick from Wake Forest, really played really well at right tackle, but they really see him as a center. Like they think that he could be, and this is like the scuttlebutt, is that they think he could be a Hall of Fame center, an All-Pro, I guess a Pro Bowl right tackle, All-Pro guard, and I think a Hall of Fame center. That's kind of what the words were. And so do they think that they can move him inside? I don't know. Obviously, they did draft a couple of other offensive linemen. Jacob Monk, another kind of inside kind of guy, possibly could be fighting for the center position, came out of Duke. And then we had also Travis Glover, kind of a project player with him, massive guy, 6'6", 320. But I think he's probably more of a project practice squad. See what you can really do with him, kind of mold him the way you want. Like the Packers have always done so well with offensive linemen. So that's really what they did. They just said, let's just throw 3 guys at these issues. And then hopefully, I think we have I'm pretty sure it's like about 15 guys now that are officially on the roster to go into camp. So let them just kind of battle it out and just see, who's, obviously Elton, that's your guy. And then you have Zach Tom. And then after that, it's kind of like, okay, Rasheed Walker was nice. Do they think they can get better at left tackle with Jordan Morgan? Who knows? But the rest of those positions are open because Josh Myers really hasn't panned out. That's really been like the Packer fans have all said it. The guy from the Cincinnati Bengals, I forget his name now. Or no, it's the Chiefs. I forget who's that center. And it's going to pass me. Iowa Joe will tell me right in a second here. But he didn't really, get up to the standards of what we've, seen at the center position with Lindsley and others. So his position's up for grabs, and then that right guard is obviously up for grabs because there's no more John Runyon Jr. Creed Humphrey, thank you, Iowa Joe. So offensive line, do you think obviously the battle is usually in the trenches, right? I mean, if anybody knows that, it's the Packers Bears, right? Like that's as nitty gritty as it gets. Right there is the trenches.
3 yards in a pile of dust, right?
Right, exactly. And do you think like the offensive line that you were mentioning with yours? I think the Lions probably have the best offensive line in our division.
Penei Sewell is a bad man.
And they just paid him.
Got some people that are really dangerous and
right.
to Dan Campbell's ilk of knee biters, right? They got the knee biters.
Right. He fits the knee biter kind of mentality.
They live in that world. When I look at the Packers and what they did here, one of the names you mentioned was David Bakhtiari, and I know as a Bears fan and rooting against Aaron Rodgers for years and the Packers for years, whenever he was injured, it made me feel like we had a chance. It kind of opened the door, like, okay.
Oh, so we can maybe see that number 12 jersey. Yeah, usually we couldn't see the back of it.
A little bit, right? They clearly had a very strong bond, right. And I think he was one of the cornerstones of that offensive line for a long time. Now, he'd had some injuries over the years, but I think that that's what you're trying to replace, right? It's that you want to solidify this line for the years to come. And you certainly spent the draft capital and have the opportunity to take premium players to hopefully be able to do that, right? You have, both with the number of players you were able to take, and then also, addressing the position at the high end of the draft with some of that, premium draft capital. I think, I'm not sure if you had to rank NFC North Lions. I agree. I think the Lions are probably number 1. I think it's kind of a toss up there. Then if you go Vikings, Bears, or Packers at this point, I don't really have I couldn't tell you with a lot of faith that I think the Bears are in the top, would be number 2. I think we're battling for 3 or 4. Where do you think you put the Packers there?
Yeah, we've had solid offensive lines. Obviously, since Bakhtiari has been gone, it's obviously, we lost, an all-pro, obviously. But I felt like we've been past that moment since 2021
Well, and Love gets rid of the
when he got
ball.
the
Love
right.
throws the ball away pretty quickly, so that helps.
Right. So, I mean, we've already kind of lived the life without Bakhtiari because he's been injured for like almost a year and a half, 2 years. So, like, we kind of just said, look, we're going to kind of move forward. And Rasheed Walker stepped in. It was a pleasant surprise. Zach Tom also pleasant surprise for being kind of a smaller guy, but longer arms. So, like, it kind of has worked out really nicely. And as you could tell, if you saw, any Packer game for the last like 7 weeks, you could see this offense really gelling. Yes, Jordan Love getting the ball out quicker. Maybe that also helps deficiencies with the offensive line is that the ball is coming out. So even if you see that there's a weakness, it's not going to matter because you can't get to him fast enough. So I think it was a good blend of, hey, Jordan Love, is covering some deficiencies if there was offensive line issues, but then at the same time, I think they did play a little bit better than we kind of anticipated, and obviously it took them to the divisional round, and they got enough solid play out of everybody to get them to that point. But one more pick on the offensive side was USC running back Marshawn Lloyd, and this is a kind of a big running back that I really am happy about. Explosive, can catch the ball. Obviously, AJ Dillon's on a 1-year deal coming back, so he's kind of just on a prove-it deal. Maybe he can make some money if it's not with the Packers, somewhere else after this year. But Josh Jacobs, the big free agent that we brought in over the offseason, giving him some sort of insurance policy, right? As the dynasty world, we say you're handcuffed, right? Just to make sure, just in case if anything happens. AJ Dillon has shown some injury issues, and so is Josh Jacobs too. So you can never have too much. And I think you, as a Bear fan, can attest to this. I think this league, and even in fantasy purposes too, you're seeing the teams. The bell cow is really kind of a very rare thing now, right? It's like outside of Christian McCaffrey, outside of a Derrick Henry, or Josh Jacobs, Jonathan Taylor, right? Like you're starting to see less of that, and then more committee, and seeing a guy like come in as a 1-2 punch. Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon were so good at it for the the last couple of years, but you obviously made some additions over the offseason with the running back position. You could talk about your position as well.
No, very, very excited to get DeAndre Swift in. I think if you're thinking about a new rookie quarterback, having that good pass receiving running back that you can dump it off to, as a safety blanket, again, really, really helps to have that available and have that trusted resource. I think, the Bears certainly have a, 3-headed monster with Khalil Herbert, Roshan Johnson, and now DeAndre Swift. I tend to think that they'll, still look at Swift first, for goal line carries and still look to him to get the majority of the workload. Same way I think the Packers look at Josh Jacobs, right? But it's such a grind at that position these days in the NFL. If you don't have two guys you really like, you're in trouble because someone's going to be hurt. Eventually, they're going to miss 3-4 games. They're going to catch a high ankle sprain, and it's just. Well, it's great if you have one of those bell cow backs. Even if you do, it's hard to feel very confident about it. You're one bad tackle, one injury away from losing them the rest of the year. And then I think, also with the Packers pick, I think that they can get out of the Jacobs contract actually relatively easy after a year. So if he ends up hitting it, this could be another one to say, hey, we would rather have a rookie running back than a high-priced free agent on a second year of a deal in a position that typically doesn't age well. So I think – there's some interesting angles for that pick. From the Bears side, I think DeAndre Swift leads the way. I think Herbert's our 1 yard, 2 yard guy, and then Roshan kind of plays a little bit on both sides, backing both of those guys up because he's more of a split level. But I do think the Packers have you saw them get rid of a staple. AJ Dillon just seems like he's had splashes, but he's never had a sustained period where you thought,
for a guy that big, it just seems like he's the easiest shoestring tackle there is in the league. I feel like
as he is, right? He looks like he should be running through 5-6 guys at a time. And
when we need a yard, we get 5 inches from him. So it's not a great situation. But again,
I understand why you went and signed someone else, right? And why you continue to address the need. So
and I've seen some rumors that maybe he could play H-back, which would be interesting. Maybe he could play like a fullback kind of role, just getting in front of Josh Jacobs and just being another little tank in front of him, kind of like the All-Star years of Tampa Bay as we used to see. But I think it's it's an interesting position across the NFC North because you just see Jahmyr Gibbs and Montgomery, your old guy. You're seeing Swift and Herbert and Roschon, and now you see Jones. And I don't even think they have anybody outside of Jones. And I think they have that not Abanikane, but I forgot that other guy that's on the Vikings. But anyway, they have Aaron Jones is still pretty good, and you're seeing that the NFC North is trying to get more towards the running game. Obviously, yes, they still have prolific offenses. They have a lot of great targets as receivers, but they think they all want to live in the running realm, right? And
especially
I think that
Detroit runs the ball all game long.
I think it was they were like top 3 in rushing. I think it was. So yeah, I think it's you got to keep up, and you also just have to keep chewing that clock, right? If you can, balance your offense with pass and run, it's only going to make your team better and put the stress on the defense and make them sit out there more often, right? So, one more thing, just because it was something that Brian Gutekunst addressed right away that he wanted to get back to, and that was getting a quarterback in the system as a camp arm, groom them, possibly even trade them. That used to be a staple from Ron Wolf, whether it be Matt Hasselbeck, Mark Brunell, Aaron Brooks, guys like that or Doug Peterson. Guys
was Matt Flynn in one of his guys?
Yeah, that was more Ted Thompson, but yes, you're right. Like obviously draft a guy, let him develop a little bit. If he has to play a little bit, and get a couple snaps, that's great. But maybe they'll see what they can have on him. And there's a lot of discussion on on the X app that maybe he could even beat out Sean Clifford, which is kind of crazy because this is a guy that people were like, why did he fall so far to the 7th round? This guy should have been at least a 4th rounder at best. Captain, led his team. As far as has all high records for Tulane. So I think this is a guy, especially since I've seen a couple clips of his highlights. Very accurate for the most part. Obviously gets a little bit more stressed if people are coming after him, which makes sense. So if he gets off of his feet and if he's not balanced on his feet, kind of throws inaccurate passes. But again, as a camp arm, you're just kind of hoping that, hey, look, show us some stuff in preseason. Maybe have a battle with Sean Clifford and see what happens. I don't know who your backup is right now. Who is your backup, obviously, after Caleb?
The Bears, I think you're looking at Tyson Bagent again.
Bagent. Okay.
Mr. Bagent man, yeah.
Oh, you're hoping that you don't have to see any of these backups, right? Like, that's the obvious idea.
Yeah.
No one's going and signing.
We're hoping none of these. If we see these guys coming in, it's a bad day for both.
Right.
Teams,
and that's the weird thing when you the weird thing is when you see the Steelers situation, right, where they have the Fields and Russell Wilson, or wherever Marcus Mariota is these days, wherever he is, that situation of knowing you have someone that actually could maybe take a job as soon as you even get sniff a cold, and could take over, right? Because it's the Brady Bledsoe thing, right? You never know what could happen, but in this situation, nothing to worry about for Caleb, nothing to worry about for Jordan Love. But it's just kind of just getting more arms in the camp. And I'm glad that they're kind of going back to this because you never know if Pratt turns out to be something, lights up the league. I mean, I remember Taysom Hill, right?
Oh, yeah.
Kind of had a really good camp, really didn't know how to use him here with Mike McCarthy, then goes and has a pretty decent career with Sean Payton down in New Orleans. So, interesting how things can kind of change for a quarterback. We'll see what happens. Magoo's there. It's obviously Clifford and now Pratt. So that's really the offense.
Made a career out of having backup quarterbacks run out there, look good for a half or two, and then selling them for a pick. If you get that chance to just have a backup that can show something and get anything out of them, it's a quarterback desperate league. So if you can, get another guy out there who can just show something on tape, get something that another GM thinks he can make work, you can make a whole career out of that. So, yeah,
100%.
Very exciting.
Yeah, and I think, as Iowa kind of alluded to, is he's actually younger than Clifford, which is even better too, right? From a dynasty perspective, you're always going young, right? Because for the future, the long haul of your team, you're always thinking okay, young guys, at least I know I can have them for a long duration of the time. Obviously, Clifford actually came in nicely when he was coming in for break or relief of Jordan Love because we were up so much or whatever it was. He came in, did really nice things, threw the ball with confidence, and that's what you want out of your backup. And in the event that if anything should happen, they are able to run the offense and do it smoothly enough where you don't feel like, hey, okay, for that rest of the game or maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, we can get by with our backup, right? That's the main point of the backup.
You don't want they can't be expected to lead a fourth quarter comeback, but
right,
confident,
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was basically the offensive side. It was really cool to see, like, the guys that we took. Obviously, they addressed the offensive line position. It's going to be a really great camp battle. Once we get closer to like training camp, we'll talk about camp battles. But obviously, we got to get to rookie mini camp and then the OTAs, that stuff. So that's kind of happening like as we speak. I think Saturday is when guys come in here for Green Bay. I don't know what for you guys in Chicago. I'm sure it's starting this week for you guys, I would think.
Yeah, they're down in Platteville. No, it used to be Platteville. It's Bourbonnais now, so they'll be getting down there.
Okay.
Getting things set up here soon. So it's again from now until week 1 or week 2. This will be very exciting time for us.
It is. It usually is. All right, so let's move on to this defensive side. That's obviously the highlight of this draft. Addressing the safety position, the linebacker position was a very big need. And obviously we'll give the flowers to the guys, as they, like Oladipo and like Kalen King and some of those other guys at kind of at the later end, and also Cooper. But the big highlight players that obviously we want to talk about is Javon Bullard and Edgerrin Cooper. So Javon Bullard, more of a nickel safety, played a lot of nickel in this last season, but played safety the year before for Georgia. Obviously, as you know, with Georgia, the best defense in college football, your national champions. It's kind of like national champions from a year prior, not Michigan was this last year, but just a really good pedigree of football right there, right? And I think you're seeing the Packers because they're drafting so many Georgia Bulldogs, and it's kind of funny, but they're seeing something, right? And Brian Gutekunst said it. He's like, their program's just doing things better than everybody else, right?
And it's not only just the number, like the dominance at the college level, but the players that are making it to the NFL are excelling at the NFL level, right? For a long time, I think Nick Saban, had a lot of guys make it to the NFL that maybe fell a little flat because they weren't surrounded by the All-Americans on every side around them, right? The Georgia guys do seem, especially on the defensive side, when they hit the NFL, they don't miss a beat. They've been performing, so.
And
going back to the wall there.
Exactly, and it's kind of, I think it's kind of like, well, now Packer fans are just kind of looking to see how many Georgia Bulldogs are coming into the draft because they're probably one of them.
Philadelphia, right? That was their whole
exactly. Howie Roseman loves
right?
it too,
yeah.
and that's just a trend, right? Like you want to dip as much as you can into that well because. Clearly, they were the best team. They had the best players, and they had the best coaching. So you would want that on your squad because then they are most likely to succeed into the NFL. Hopefully, that's the idea, right?
Yeah.
So
in fantasy, I want players on good teams. If I'm drafting guys, I want to draft them from the best system, the best team, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's SEC football too, right? Like this is what you're seeing from it now. Obviously, Edgerrin Cooper, Big 12 out of Texas A&M, but. Fast. This guy screams speed. He is a sideline to sideline kind of guy. Pairing him up with Quay Walker is going to be a freak show of of a linebacker play. And now that with Jeff Hafley that we are moving from the 3-4 defense to the 4-3, it is going to be just the two of them kind of being the captains of the the defense right there, alongside obviously whatever they want to do with Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, Preston Smith, if they're going to have their hands on the ground or kind of line up as your traditional ends. But then obviously you'll have your nickels and, your cornerbacks on the outsides. But it's really just them in the middle. And it's like, as you can attest to with your two guys, it is tough, especially in the NFC North. It is smash mouth football. You got to find the ball carrier immediately. Now, I guess – this division's, shifting a little bit more pass heavy, a little bit more compared to the run, but still, like we just mentioned with the running backs, they still want to run the ball. So you need to get to those running backs as quick as possible. But your linebackers, you still have the one brother, right? And then you still have technically the white guy. I can't remember his name either.
We have TJ Edwards is the big
TJ Edwards,
guy,
from
right?
also Wisconsin product.
Yeah. So I'm happy. The Bears are a franchise where I believe that there's a secret scroll in the bottom of Hallis Hall that says you're never allowed to draft a quarterback, but you can draft any linebacker and they'll turn out, right? Like that is the one position that we just have had tons of spoils, whether it was Urlacher back in the day, Roquan Smith before we shipped him out of town. We've been lucky to be able to hit on linebacker, and that's something that we've been spoiled with. Like I said, I think You've got T.J. Edwards. I'm trying to think who the other guy was that we had.
The guy that has his brother that plays safety.
Sanborn, right? I think it's Jack.
Well, that's Sanborn, but didn't you also have that linebacker from Buffalo?
Edwards.
Yes.
Edwards. Yeah. So it's Edwards is on the weak side. Again, it was frustrating because I think we paid the money that we would have paid to Roquan to TJ Edwards, right? I think Roquan was still a higher level talent. He went on to make captain over for the Ravens and has been doing a fantastic job for them. So, I'm okay with our linebacker crew. A little bit of heartburn there just because of what it cost us to put it together and what I think we could have had in some spots. But again, it's certainly not the area of our defense that I'm worrying about, right? For whatever reason, the Bears just seem to luck out when it comes to linebackers. That seems to be something that we can, source our fourth string guy.
Tremaine Edmonds.
Say again?
Tremaine Edmonds.
Yes.
You still have TJ Edwards as well.
Yeah.
But it's like funny because you have Edwards, Edmonds, and Sanborn. Because Edmonds had his brother who played for the safety for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and then he was on the Buffalo Bills. Anyway, sorry. Go on.
Absolutely. No. So again, it's like I said, certainly was always nice to look at the Packers thinking they had a weak secondary. I think they had some games last year. I mean, first game of the season, you guys looked great last year. I don't know, no one can complete a pass against.
I mean, it's usually week one. We all look like darlings except for the Bears on week one. But
yeah, that was a rough one. But no, you guys threw a lot of resources at it again, though. You certainly. Yeah.
You kind of have to, right? Like safety, like we just said, Xavier McKinney was the big offseason free agent, came from the Giants. You put him at the safety, and that was kind of just like the waiting game, right? Because there's still guys that are available. You have Justin Simmons, you have Quadre Diggs that's still available. Maybe a couple other guys left in free agency.
Like the new running back of defense now too, where they're kind of like, hey, we don't really want to pay these guys and go super long in a deal because. Right,
like the athleticism of Xavier McKinney because we gave him top of market deal, but at the same time he's 24 years old.
Top of market deal that it would have been for the top safety 5 years ago, right? So
I think the waiting game for the Packer fans was, okay, they must be addressing it in the draft. Okay, so then who are they addressing? Is it Cole Bishop? Is it Javon Bullard? Is it who is it going to be? And then everybody was pushing for a Javon Bullard. Everybody's mock drafts had him, and boom, we finally take him, and it's a godsend. Evan Williams, another Oregon product, and that was a weird round. It felt like there was like 5 Oregon players that just went right around his pick, and it was kind of a cool thing. And he's a kind of like a Micah Hyde, Swiss Army knife kind of player. So really nice to see, them really address that and really put as much resources as you can. Can't stress that enough. But we'll see where I was just kind of like, talking to Fred and Matt about this, and I don't know if it's kind of the same thing with you, but I know at least for our depth, because we've had 2 killer drafts the years before, and now we add 11 more players that are young rookies now in this draft. We have a lot of depth, and like as far as like, breaking it down to the 52-man roster, the safety and like I guess the defensive back cuts, it's going to be crazy because you have Jair Alexander, right? Not going anywhere. You have Keyshawn Nixon, who you just signed, slot technically. You have him as like a slot nickel corner. And then Eric Stokes is the big question, right? Because Georgia Bulldog had the injuries. He couldn't play. He's been out. He had a great rookie campaign, but the next year he injures ACL, blah, 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 whatever. And then you have last year's 7th round darling, Carrington Valentine, and Corey Ballantyne. So you have those 5 right there, and then you draft a Kalen King, who, in my opinion, and this is probably the steal of the draft, this guy was a bona fide first-round pick a year ago, and then he has a bad year in Penn State, and then he drops to the 3rd to last pick. And now he's sitting there, chip on his shoulder, every motivation that could be possibly thought of. And I think he's going to just tear this roof apart of this team, or well, not the team, but like on this defense and the cornerback room, and hopefully potentially even just make a case to be a starter. But then you look at that, that's like 6 defensive backs right there, or sorry, corners. And now you just put like 5 safeties with Xavier, the 3 that you just drafted, and Johnson Jr. Like that's a lot right there. And then you have to cut that down to almost like maybe 3 or 4 at each position, possibly 5 at each position. That's a lot. And so I was just trying to like mentally like take like a note of like how many guys would you cut, because like a lot of times you keep like 10 offensive linemen, you keep like 2 to 3 running backs, usually 5 to 6 receivers, 2 or 3 tight end. It's like you kind of figure out your 52, right? And you start to look at it with, as much as it's awesome to be this young and have this much depth and youth, there's going to be a lot of guys that might get cut, and that might be like, tasty to the Lions or the Bears or the Vikings.
Desirable cuts.
Right, exactly. Like as much as like everybody's like, damn, the Packers had a good draft. They're like, damn, they might drop a couple guys that could just be easy pickings for us because they're just sitting in the practice squad or cut, period. So really kind of a double-edged sword, right? You love that you have all these guys to see what you can find, but then you better hope the coaching and the scouting of these players is correct, and you make the right cuts, because you don't want to let some guy get cut and then he goes to your rival, down, I-95 and has a Hall of Fame career for, the Bears, right? So
for me, this is just what it must be like to see how the other half lives, Sanjay.
I know this is uncharted territory.
All these guys we're going to cut are going to be picked up everywhere. This is not exactly what the Bears offseason talk has been like lately. So good for you guys. Enjoy
you got to start sometime.
Yeah.
You got to start sometime, and hopefully,
we've got just to talk to the Bears secondary for a second. I mean, I like our top end talent, right? The cornerbacks with Tyreek Stevenson. You got Jalen Johnson. I think we finally paid him, and that's great. Giving Kevin Byard coming in. He's a little older, but he's still a top performing safety. I think we've got the top. Our starters I feel great about. I don't think we quite have the depth in the secondary that I would love to have, but it's not where we're going to struggle. We're going to struggle because the guys are going to be covering for 4, 5, 6 seconds, right? That's where they're going to have a tougher time if we're not able to get the pressure on there. So at least wanted to touch on that. But yeah, it must be nice to be worried that some of those guys are going to come down and enjoy some nice summertime.
You can't have them, right? You know what? I hope we trade them to the Chiefs. It's good.
Hey, now have them come down here, check out a town with some people and some buildings and stuff.
The amount of sloppy seconds that you guys take, the NFC North takes from the Packers.
Italian beef, that's all. Just some sloppy Italian beef.
Hey, you got Simone Biles now, so just enjoy having her on your sideline.
Owens can spread the word. Tell everyone get a migration going here.
Yeah, let's kind of put a bow to this conversation and just kind of give your little way too early predictions here for your right now. I think Vegas has the Bears at like a 58 to 60% chance of making the playoffs, actually ahead of the Vikings, which again, this is probably going to put your guys' heads too big now because you're hearing all these things. And the minute you got the 1 and number 9 pick to get them right next to each other, it's like you guys are thinking Super Bowl. But what are your thoughts?
I think the Bears are going to be an improved defense. I think we have the chance to be a much more threatening offense than we've been. I think the high end is probably 10-7 this year. I think 10-7, 11-6. I think that can come our way. There were a couple of games last year, even with Fields and the team that we had out there that we left out there. Denver, we should have won, right? That was a very winnable game. A couple other ones out there.
There's a Lions game you should have won.
Absolutely. We gave one of those away for sure.
Right.
I think we can get there, but I think it's still a young team. I think it's a rookie quarterback, and as good as the rookie quarterbacks have been atually, you still have to build in some adjustment period, right? You still have to build in, some acclimation to the NFL. I'm glad that they've put them in a, child-friendly playroom here a little bit with Keenan Allen safety blanket, all the wide receiver help, right? Like they're doing the right stuff. We child-proof the house for the first time.
I hope so, for your sake. He gets hurt more than anybody I know.
Right? I think realistically, gun to my head, I'm going 9-8.
All right. Yeah, honestly, it's whatever Caleb Williams gives you, right? It's 100%. The Caleb Williams show. If he tears the roof off, off the league, and like almost like a CJ Stroud. If you get CJ Stroud,
I'll do this podcast every week with you. I'd be thrilled.
I won't have you. No, this is. I'll have you if you guys are 0-15. Sure, come on. I want to keep hearing the woes. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, good for you guys. I hope for the. for the sake of a Bears fan, and I think you guys have wished so much from these quarterbacks, and it's never panned out for the most part. I mean, Cutler gave you a nice little run there, but outside of Sexy Rexy, it really hasn't been, a lot of glimmer. But, maybe, after you've learned something with the Trubisky experiment, you learned something with the Fields experiment, maybe the third time's a charm with the first overall. But we'll see. Last real question for you, and I want to say this on behalf of all Packer fans: you cowards, you had to go wanting to build a dome. Like you don't want the cold anymore. Come on.
I'll be shocked if they get anything done in the next 5 years.
Really?
Yeah, I think it's a lot of posturing. I'm not sure how detailed you've got in it, but basically,
I don't know. It's just kind of whatever was like leaked or kind of shown,
Yeah.
The images or whatever.
It's all political posturing. They have the Bears purchased land in Arlington Heights that used to be
Right.
the
racetrack, right? Yeah.
And Arlington Heights came and said, okay, by the way, the taxes on that, even though it's an abandoned lot now, are going to be 10 times what they were when it was a functioning racetrack, right? So the village was really trying to play fast and loose with the taxes on it to really, bend it over on the Bears. Who they said, hey, you bought the land, you're here. So I think we're going to see a lot of renderings of pretty drawings of, really fun, creative ways they can stay in the city. But, the reality is they're one of the highest valued franchises that doesn't own their own stadium. And I think they want to change that. I think they want to, do that, and then hopefully maybe McCaskey's then go sell. That's what in my mind that's what this is all leading up to. So we'll see on the dome. I'd be disappointed as well to see.
It's like everybody's just doing it. Like if you're gonna get like $10 billion, you're gonna put a dome on it apparently because like God forbid you go and play in the cold. Like how football should be played. And if anything, I was kind of like, as Packer fans, we're kind of like, look, that might be an advantage now. Now, all three of our divisional, foes are going to be upset to play in the cold when they have to come into Lambeau. So, it's always tough to play in Chicago, especially based on weather and the wind, and obviously the field conditions aren't always the greatest. But yeah, I mean, either way though, that stadium is a pile. Like you are due for something. At the very least, renovations.
60,000 fans you can fit. It's not great inside. It's a pain to get to. I completely understand what they're doing. It's just I don't know where it's going to actually land. I think that probably will have a dome just because of if they own it, they want to rent it out for a bunch of other stuff and monetize it all year round. And it's sad today that's what drives that stuff sometimes. But I do think that is the world we live in. So I'll have to mentally get prepared for that. But I agree. I do think it is a soft move from a football perspective. So how do you claim bear weather when it's set with a thermostat?
Exactly. You can't. You really can't bear down on that. So, Mark, thank you so much. This is obviously, thank you for, coming out. Can I, hey, you're on a whole show full of Packer fans. If you'd like to give us a little tease of a Go Pack Go, you can say it right here. No one's ever going to know that you kind of said a Go Pack Go on our show. So we obviously appreciate, you joining on. Obviously, Matt and Fred hopefully we'll be I don't know when we're going to do our next show, honestly, because we'll have OTAs, we have the mini camps. This is kind of that hiatus that we kind of take. This is the kind of dreadful slow part of the year where it's like, okay, yeah, sure, they're running in shorts or just kind of getting acclimated to the league with the rookies, right? And then the vets come in for a day or two, and then obviously it's just kind of a all politically correct things to say in front of the camera.
Best shape of his life. Best shape of his life.
Yeah, right. I feel like I'm, 5 years young. Exactly. So until we get to end of July, and we actually get to training camp, it's kind of still a lot of just, it's still great that football is, here, and maybe actually, and that's actually what I'll probably say because I think the schedule comes out next week. So that will be fun to talk. Maybe, Matt and Fred will come on and we'll kind of talk about the schedule and maybe give our way too early predictions because we're going to say, 17-0 or whatever it might be. So Mark, thank you again so much. We'll love to have you if you're 0-15 again. We'll bring you. No, you know what? Honestly, it's really cool to, and as we shift to doing our own thing on this show, doing the Sweep Studios, we will have kind of these fun shows, especially during the season and when it's Bears week and it's rivalry week. Maybe we can have Mark or whoever that's a Bear fan just to kind of get in. It's kind of fun just to get the other side of it. I have no quarrels with fans. Everybody can be a fan of who they want to be. I still hate the Vikings, but it doesn't matter. I have Viking friends, but yeah. So until that time, keep an eye out, everybody. There was 120 of you here tonight, so that's awesome. Thank you so much for watching the show. It's just myself tonight, and then obviously having Mark as a guest. So really nice to see everybody come out on a Wednesday evening. So keep an eye out on our socials. Keep an eye on Facebook or Twitter, and then we'll kind of post our next show. Maybe it might be scheduled release, or maybe it might not be till training camp. But this is kind of your time to also go enjoy the nice weather, go play some golf, go enjoy some time with your families, go grill out. But until then, as we always say here, thank you so much, and go Pack, go.